Please, just let me stay beautiful a little longer. I want men to worship the ground I work on. But the spirit in the mirror was hungry, and hungry things don't negotiate. Zainab forced herself to remain motionless, even as the symbols seemed to pulse against her skin, even as she swore she could feel them moving, rearranging themselves into patterns she hadn't seen Mama Ife draw. When the painting was finished, Mama Ife stepped back and began to chant. The language was nothing Zainab had ever heard, not Yoruba, not Igbo, not Hausa, something older than all of those, something that predated the naming of things. The words felt wrong in the air, like they were scraping against reality itself, like the universe didn't want them spoken but couldn't prevent it. As Mama Eve chanted, the candles began to flicker, all of them, simultaneously, their flames bending toward Zainab as if pulled by invisible strings. The mirrors on the walls started to tremble, just slightly at first, then more faster, until they were rattling in their frames like teeth chattering in a skull. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly that Zainab's breath became visible, small clouds of steam that dissipated into the candlelit air. She was covered in goosebumps, her skin prickling with something beyond mere temperature. Then, Mama Eve brought out the calabash. It was old, worn smooth by countless hands, and it was filled with liquid so dark it looked black in the dim light. The surface of the liquid didn't reflect the candles. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, like a hole in reality. "Drink," Mama Eve said, holding it out. "All of it. Don't stop until it's empty, no matter what you taste, no matter what you feel." Zainab took the calabash with shaking hands and looked into it. For just a second, she saw her own face reflected in that black liquid. But the reflection was smiling when she wasn't. Its eyes were open too wide, and its mouth was moving as if speaking words she couldn't hear. She raised the calabash to her lips and drank. The liquid was thick as blood and burned like swallowing fire, mixed with broken glass, mixed with something alive that didn't want to be swallowed. It tasted like copper and rotting flowers. Her throat tried to close, her body tried to reject it, but Mama Eve's hand was on the bottom of the calabash, holding it firmly in place. "Finish it," the priestess commanded. "Every drop." Zainab swallowed and swallowed, tears streaming down her face, her stomach churning, bile rising to meet the descending liquid. When the calabash was finally empty, she doubled over, gasping, certain she was about to vomit everything back up. Then she felt it enter her. Not through her mouth, not through her skin. Through something else, something spiritual, something she didn't have words for. It was like a door inside her body. A door she'd never known existed, suddenly opened, and something vast and ancient and hungry slithered through. Zainab screamed. The thing entering her was massive, far too large to fit inside a human body, yet somehow it was folding itself, compressing itself, forcing itself into a space that shouldn't be able to contain it. She could feel it coiling behind her eyes, nesting in her throat, spreading through her limbs like roots tearing through soil. It touched her heart, and she felt the muscle stutter, skip a beat, then resume with a rhythm that wasn't quite her own. It brushed against her thoughts, and suddenly there were memories that didn't belong to her. A palace made of red clay, men kneeling with their foreheads pressed to the ground, the weight of gold on her neck, the taste of honey and power. The moment poison touched her lips and everything went dark. These weren't her memories. They were Ayaba's. "Let her in," Mama Eve's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Stop fighting. If you resist, she'll kill you trying to settle." Zainab went limp, surrendering, making space for the invasion. The moment she stopped resisting, the pain shifted into something else, a sensation of being filled, completed, made more than she had been. The presence settled deeper, burrowing into parts of her she didn't know she possessed. She felt it tasting her soul, sampling her memories, learning who Zainab was so it could wear her properly. And then, impossibly, She felt it begin to adjust her. Not her thoughts, her body. Her skin tightened, the texture changing subtly, pores shrinking, the surface becoming smoother, more luminous. Her hair thickened, each strand strengthening, the texture becoming silkier, the color deepening to a rich black that seemed to drink in light. Her lips filled slightly, not dramatically, just enough to make them more appealing. Her eyes brightened, the whites becoming clearer, the irises more vivid. It was like someone had taken her face and turned up the contrast, increased the saturation, sharpened the focus. She was still Zainab, still had the same features, the same bone structure, but now there was something else layered on top, something that made her impossible to look away from. The transformation lasted maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. When it finally stopped, when the presence finally settled into stillness inside her, silence crashed down on the room. The candles stopped flickering, the mirrors stopped trembling, the temperature slowly returned to normal. Everything was still except for Zainab, kneeling on the floor, gasping for air, her body covered in cooling sweat, the white symbols on her skin now completely absorbed, leaving no trace they'd ever been there. "Stand," Mama Eve said softly. "Look at what you've become." Zainab's legs barely held her, but she managed to stand and turn toward the largest mirror on the wall. The woman looking back at her was her. Same face, same body, but transformed in a way that defied description. There was a glow to her skin now, not literal but present nonetheless, a quality of luminescence that made her seem lit from within. Her eyes had a depth they'd never possessed, like looking into them would be falling into something infinite. Her every curve seemed more pronounced, more perfect, more deliberate, as if God had gone back and refined his initial work. But it was more than visual. There was a presence emanating from her now, something that filled the space around her, something that would make people stop and stare and forget what they'd been doing. She looked like power felt. She looked like desire made flesh. "It's done," Mama Ife said, and for the first time her voice carried something like pity. "Ayaba is inside you now. She's sharing her beauty, her magnetism, her irresistible nature. Men will see you and lose control of themselves. They won't be able to help it. Their minds will shut down and their instincts will take over, and all those instincts will be focused on you." Zainab couldn't stop staring at herself. This was what she'd always wanted to be. This was the version of herself she'd imagined in her most ambitious fantasies. This was power. "But remember," Mama Ifa continued, and her tone made Zainab finally tear her eyes away from the mirror. "She is watching, always waiting. She feels everything you feel, and the moment your heart opens to real love, the moment you betray the agreement, she will destroy you both, you and whoever you love. This is not a threat. This is simply what will happen. Ayaba cannot bear to see others experience the love that was stolen from her." She handed Zainab a small red cloth pouch tied with black cord. "Keep this with you always. Inside are 3 things: a piece of her bone, a seed from her burial ground, and one of your own tears, taken while you were drinking. If you ever want to release her before she releases you, if the burden becomes too heavy, burn this pouch and beg her forgiveness. Maybe she'll listen. Maybe she won't. But without it, you have no chance of freedom except death." Zainab took the pouch and clutched it like a lifeline, even though part of her, the part that was still fully her, wondered if it was a trap, if burning it would only make things worse. "Now get dressed," Mama Eve said, turning away. "Return to Lagos. Begin your new life. And try to remember when the price comes due, and it always comes due, that you were warned, you were told. You chose this with open eyes." Zainab dressed quickly, her hands shaking, her body still adjusting to the presence inside it. She could feel Ayaba now, not as a separate thing but as part of herself, a second consciousness sharing her skull, watching through her eyes, smiling with her mouth. She handed Mama Eve the bag with 200,000 naira. The priestess took it without counting, without even looking inside, and set it on the table among her bottles and strange implements. "Go," she said, not unkindly. "Your old life is over. Your new life begins now. Use it well, or don't. Either way, you will learn." Zainab walked out of that blue house into afternoon sunlight that seemed brighter than it had been before, as if the world itself had changed in the hours she'd been inside. Or perhaps it wasn't the world that had changed. Perhaps it was her. Perhaps she was now seeing reality through eyes that contained more than they should, through a lens tinted by ancient power and ancient hunger. Behind her, inside the house, Mama Eve stood among her mirrors and whispered to the shadows. "Another one, Ayaba. Another girl who thinks she's different, who thinks she's strong enough to resist love. How many more before you're satisfied? How many more souls must you consume?" In the mirrors, 100 reflections smiled with too many teeth. And in Zainab's chest, beneath her ribs, something that had been starving for 300 years finally began to feed again. The change was immediate and absolute. On the bus ride back to Lagos, every man stared. Not the casual appreciation that pretty girls receive. Something else, something primal and uncontrollable. Their eyes glazed over when they looked at her. One man stood up and physically pushed an elderly woman out of his seat to offer it to Zainab. Another offered to carry her bag, his hands trembling as he reached for it. A third simply stood frozen in the aisle, staring, until the conductor slapped him hard across the face and shouted at him to move. By Monday morning, Lagos had become a different city entirely. Zainab walked into Gateway Hotel, and Mr. Adalik stopped mid-sentence, his mouth falling open, the words dying on his lips. He stared at her with that same glazed expression she'd seen on the bus, his pupils dilating, his breathing becoming shallow. "Zainab," he said, and his voice was thick, almost confused. "You look. What did you do something different?" She smiled. Just smiled, and watched something fundamental break in his eyes. By that afternoon, he'd promoted her to assistant manager with double her salary. By Friday, he'd rented her a 2-bedroom apartment in Surulere and bought her a small car. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. His wife called him 47 times that week. He ignored every single call, his attention completely consumed by Zainab, by being near her, by breathing the same air she breathed. Within 3 months, Zainab had moved to a flat in Lekki Phase 1. Within 6 months, her closet looked like a boutique showroom. Within a year, she'd quit working entirely and lived off the worship of men who couldn't help themselves, who transferred money without being asked, who competed with each other for the privilege of her attention. Her Instagram account exploded to 500,000 followers. Brands begged her to promote their products. Other women flooded her inbox asking for her beauty secrets, her diet plan, her skincare routine. She gave them lies because the truth lived inside her, eating quietly. Life was perfect. Life was easy. Life was everything she dreamed it would be. Except at night she heard the chewing sounds. Soft at first, like someone eating something wet in the next room. She would search her apartment but never find the source, because the source was inside her stomach, inside her chest, inside the spaces between her organs where Ayaba nested and fed on the worship Zainab collected. Then, one Saturday night at a rooftop party in Victoria Island, Zainab met a man. He was the first man in 2 years who looked at her like she was human. He stood by the bar, tall and quiet, wearing simple clothes while everyone else around him flexed designer labels. And most importantly, most impossibly, he wasn't looking at her. In a room full of men whose conversations had stopped when she entered, this one seemed completely unaware she existed. Inside her chest, Ayaba stirred with something like curiosity. "That one is different," the spirit whispered in Zainab's mind. "Leave him alone. He is not for us." But curiosity pulled Zainab forward. She positioned herself beside him and smiled, the smile that had opened doors and wallets across Lagos. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she said. He glanced at her, just glanced, the way you'd look at anyone who'd spoken to you. And his eyes remained clear. Not glazed, not hungry, just polite and present. "Parties aren't really my thing," he said. "I'm Ibrahim. It's my cousin's birthday. Family obligation, you know how it is." They talked. He was an architect, passionate about designing spaces where people could live well. He asked her real questions and seemed genuinely interested in her answers, not just waiting for his turn to speak or staring at her body. When he gave her his number, he said, "If you ever want to talk to someone who isn't trying to get something from you, call me. No pressure, no expectations, just conversation." Then he left the party. Zainab stood there, stunned, holding his number, feeling something she hadn't felt in 2 years, genuine interest in another person. "Throw it away," Ayaba hissed inside her mind. "Now, before this becomes dangerous." But that night, lying in her luxury bed, Zainab texted him anyway. They met for lunch the next day, then dinner, then coffee, then walks along Bar Beach at sunset. Ibrahim never tried to impress her with money or gifts. He just talked to her about buildings and dreams and frustrations and Lagos traffic and 1,000 small things that made him who he was. And slowly, terrifyingly, Zainab felt something growing in her chest that had nothing to do with the spirit living there. But the more time she spent with Ibrahim, the worse everything else became. The chewing sounds grew louder, more constant. She could hear them during conversations now, loud enough that she'd have to excuse herself because she couldn't think over the sound of consumption happening inside her body. The mirror incidents multiplied. One morning, her reflection moved 3 full seconds behind her real movements. Another time, every mirror in her apartment showed a different version of her. One rotting, one with black eyes, one screaming silently with her mouth sewn shut. Then the men started dying. Mr. Adalek collapsed at his desk on a Tuesday afternoon, clutching his chest, his face purple, dead before the ambulance arrived. He was only 52. The autopsy said massive heart attack, but Zainab knew better. The senator who'd sponsored a part of her luxurious life had a stroke that left him paralyzed and drooling in a hospital bed. His last coherent words were, "Black eyes in the mirror, black eyes watching." 3 other sponsors died within weeks of each other. One drove his car into a Lagos lagoon and drowned. One was found in his bedroom, face frozen in an expression of such terror that the coroner wrote in his report, "I have never seen a human face contorted this way before." One simply never woke up, though every medical test showed nothing wrong with him. Zainab told herself it was coincidence. Lagos was stressful. Men had heart attacks. Accidents happened. But late at night, when she was alone, she knew the truth. Ayaba was feeding more aggressively now, consuming the men who'd worshipped Zainab, drinking their life force like wine, growing stronger as Zainab grew weaker because her attention was divided, because her heart was beginning to open to someone the spirit couldn't touch. 4 months into seeing Ibrahim, lying beside him in his small apartment in Yaba, after they'd finally become intimate, Zainab watched him sleep and realized with crystalline clarity, I love him. Not the performative affection she'd faked with sponsors. Not the transactional fondness that came with receiving gifts. Real love. The kind that made her want his happiness more than her own comfort. The kind that made her imagine futures instead of just transactions. The kind that made her feel like a person again instead of a goddess made of borrowed beauty and ancient hunger. The moment she acknowledged the feeling, Ayaba shrieked inside her mind, a sound so loud and so filled with rage that Zainab jerked awake, gasping. Ibrahim stirred. "You okay?" "Just a bad dream," she lied, even as she felt something moving inside her body, something angry, something betrayed. That night, Zainab dreamed she was standing in that room of mirrors in Badagry, and every reflection showed a different stage of decay. In one mirror, her skin was gray and mottled like spoiled meat. In another, her eyes had sunken so deep they were just holes. In a third, her mouth was opening impossibly wide, unhinging like a snake's, and something with too many teeth was crawling out. Behind all the reflections stood Ayaba, wearing Zainab's face, but older, colder, more terrible. "You broke the covenant," she said, her voice echoing from all the mirrors at once. "You fell in love. Now you'll see what love costs." Zainab tried to run, but the mirrors were everywhere, infinite, inescapable. Ayaba's reflection stepped closer in each one, smiled with teeth that went back and back. "I was beautiful once, so beautiful that kingdoms burned, and when someone poisoned me out of jealousy, I died screaming, knowing I'd never feel love, never have a family, never grow old with someone who saw me as more than a pretty face. You think you can have what was stolen from me? You think your love matters more than my suffering?" "Please," Zainab begged. "I didn't mean to—" "Liar!" The word exploded from every direction. "You feel it right now. It's warm in your chest, soft and hopeful, and everything I'll never have. So I'll take it from you the same way it was taken from me, forcefully, suddenly, leaving you with nothing but the memory of what you lost." Zainab woke up screaming. 3 days later, she told Ibrahim she loved him. They were sitting on the beach at sunset, and the words just came out, unstoppable, inevitable. "I love you. I know it's only been 4 months. I know it's too soon, but I love you and I can't pretend I don't." Ibrahim's face broke into the most genuine smile she'd ever seen. "I love you too. I've wanted to say it for weeks." He kissed her, and for one perfect moment, Zainab felt complete. Then the pain hit. It started deep in her stomach, like something was tearing. Zainab gasped and doubled over, and Ibrahim's arms were suddenly around her, concerned, asking what was wrong. But she couldn't answer because the pain was spreading, racing through her body like fire through dry grass. Her skin began to bubble. Blisters formed on her arms, her face, her neck. Rising up like boiling water was beneath her skin. They swelled, burst, wept clear fluid that immediately turned black and smelled like rot. Ibrahim recoiled, horrified, as Zainab's beautiful face began to melt like wax held too close to flame. "What's happening?" he shouted. "We need a hospital." But hospitals couldn't fix this. Zainab's skin darkened to mottled gray. Her eyes sank into her skull, the orbital bones suddenly visible beneath thinning skin. Her lips cracked, split, bled black blood that steamed when it hit the sand. Her hair, that thick, lustrous hair that had been part of Ayaba's gift, began falling out in clumps, pulling away with strips of scalp attached, leaving raw, weeping patches behind. Inside her body, she felt Ayaba moving, crawling, eating. The spirit was consuming everything she'd given, taking back the beauty with interest, leaving destruction in its wake. Zainab collapsed on the beach, convulsing, and through her agony she heard Ayaba's voice, no longer a whisper but a roar. "This is what betrayal costs. This is what love means. You wanted to feel. Now feel everything." Her fingernails loosened, fell out one by one. Her teeth began to ache as they detached from her gums. Her skin was peeling away in sheets, revealing raw flesh beneath that immediately began to suppurate and rot. "Zainab!" Ibrahim was trying to help, trying to hold her, but when his hands touched her skin, he screamed because she was burning hot, fever hot, death hot. Through her blurring vision, Zainab saw him, saw the love in his eyes turning to horror, saw him realizing that the woman he loved was becoming something monstrous, saw the moment his face registered not just fear, but revulsion. That look, that involuntary flinch of disgust, hurt worse than all the physical agony combined. "I'm sorry," she gasped through splitting lips. "I'm so sorry. You have to leave, run. She'll kill you too." But before Ibrahim could respond, before he could run or stay or do anything at all, something erupted from Zainab's chest. Not physically, spiritually. Ayaba's form materialized above Zainab's writhing body, a shadow with a woman's shape, wearing a distorted version of Zainab's face, with eyes that were completely black and a mouth full of too many teeth. The spirit looked down at them both with something like satisfaction. "You thought love could save you," Ayaba said, her voice like wind through graves. "But love is exactly what damned you. Now watch what happens to those who break their oaths to ancient powers." The shadow reached toward Ibrahim with hands that ended in two long fingers, and Zainab, despite everything, found the strength to scream, "No!" She remembered the red pouch. Even now, even destroying her, Ayaba was still inside her body, still connected to her. She fumbled in the pocket of her dress, her beautiful dress now torn and soaked with black fluid, and pulled out the small cloth bag Mama Eve had given her. Her fingers couldn't grip properly anymore. The skin was too damaged, too slippery with fluid. But she managed to get her lighter from the same pocket, managed to click it once, twice, 3 times before a flame appeared. She touched the flame to the red pouch. Ayaba shrieked, a sound so loud the beach seemed to vibrate, birds erupting from nearby trees, car alarms triggering in the distance. The shadow form flickered like a candle flame in wind, started to dissolve. "You think burning that will free you?" the spirit screamed. "I have lived in your blood for 2 years. I have tasted your soul. You can banish me, but you cannot undo what I've done." The pouch burned completely, ashes scattering in the beach wind. Ayaba's form scattered with it, pulled back into whatever darkness had spawned her, screaming curses in that ancient language until the sound finally, mercifully, stopped. Silence crashed down on the beach. Zainab lay in the sand, barely conscious, her body destroyed, her beauty gone, everything Ayaba had given her torn away and more besides. She looked down at her hands, gray, skeletal, barely human anymore. "Ibrahim," she whispered, her voice raw as broken glass, "please, just go. Don't look at me. Don't remember me like this." But Ibrahim, his face streaked with tears, knelt beside her in the sand. "I'm not leaving you. Not after all this. You have to. I'm a monster now." "No." His voice was firm despite his tears. "You're the woman I love, and she's still in there somewhere under all this damage. We're going to get you help. Real help. Whatever this was, we'll find a way to fix it." "It can't be fixed," Zainab said. Ibrahim laid his hand on her and began to pray. "Dear Holy Spirit, I pray that you fill me with your grace now. Come into this body, break down every idol, and cast out every foe. Let every strange spirit flee away right now. Let every darkness hovering around be neutralized in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen." Zainab felt something shift. The destruction stopped. The agony was fading to a dull ache. She was alive, horrifically scarred, disfigured beyond recognition, but alive. And for the first time in 2 years, her mind was completely, utterly silent. No whispers, no chewing sounds, no presence watching through her eyes. Ayaba was gone. The price had been paid in full. 1 year later, Zainab sat on a bench outside a small church in Yaba after service, her face covered with a simple scarf that hid the worst of the scars. Her skin had healed as much as it ever would. The open sores had closed, but her face would never be the same. The mirror showed a stranger now, someone who'd survived something terrible and carried the evidence in every line and mark. She worked at a tailoring shop in Mushin, earning 60,000 naira monthly. Barely more than she'd made at Gateway Hotel, but the money was clean, honest, hers. That night, lying in her small bed, listening to rain on the roof, Zainab thought of how blessed she was to have Ibrahim in her corner. Some lessons can only be learned through living them, through paying prices that seem impossible until the bill arrives. And in the silence where Ayaba once lived and fed and whispered, there was nothing now but peace. Beautiful, blessed, hard-won peace. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of you watching this right now would take Zainab's deal in a heartbeat. I could control it, you're thinking. I wouldn't fall in love. I'm smarter than she was. That's exactly what Zainab thought. She was warned, but warnings only work on people who believe consequences apply to them. Do you? Thank you for watching. Please support me by liking, subscribing, and sharing. See you in the next one.